It's quite the find. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Crow's Thrifty Finds. My name is Melanie. So for this week's video, I'm doing something a little different. I am going to tell you all a secret. Maybe you all don't know this. There's a possibility that some of you may, but I have a feeling that this is kind of one of those trends that's just kind of catching on, and I didn't realize quite how much it's catching on. And so I was actually planning on doing a different video this week. I was actually going to do, and maybe I'll do this next week, we'll see, but I was going to do another follow-up to my 90s Bolo video. But while researching for that video, I found out something else. I found a trend that's leading to some really, really good sales on eBay, and there's kind of a catch with it, you know, and you'll get it when I start talking about it. But the category is, drum roll please, it is a trend with vintage shoes. Now, some of you may remember not too long ago, I picked up a pair of vintage chunky soled Skechers. Now, I had a pair of those in high school myself in the late 90s, and Skechers is, you know, kind of one of those mid-level brands. You know, it's not super cheap. It wasn't at Payless, you know, but it also isn't this, you know, super high-end brand either. So, you know, Skechers chunky shoes, the ones that I found, selling in, you know, the mid-30s, low 40s. That's kind of what we're looking at. So you're probably wondering, well, how does this trend carry beyond Skechers? Or maybe you're realizing that is where I'm going with this. So, and that is where I'm going with it. So when I started looking up these prices on chunky shoes from Y2K, late 90s era, I learned something. It is not just Skechers. It is pretty much literally any brand of chunky shoes from that time period. And it does not have to be high-end brands at all. As a matter of fact, there are some very, very low-level brands that have really, really great reselling points. So let's talk about those and what those are. So let's get started. There was a brand called Mud. Some of you may remember it. These shoes, you know, were not the cheapest of the cheap. We'll get to the cheapest of the cheap. We'll get the shocking brands really soon. But even Mud shoes, I had some nice shoes that I wore clubbing that were Mud shoes. And, you know, I think I paid, like, if I could, you know, recall, you know, they weren't super cheap, maybe in like the 30s or so when I purchased them. But on average, chunky platform Mud shoes are selling in the $50 range on average from that time period. People just want shoes from this, you know, late 90s Y2K time period. So $50 average for shoes, that is impressive. Next brand, there's a brand called Soda. Again, I remember this brand, kind of on the same level as Mud. And these shoes, depending on the model, are selling even higher. Soda shoes are selling even in the low hundreds. So that is an amazing pickup. It's definitely something that you want to look into if you see Soda shoes. Now, I will mention one thing before I get too far into this. Shoes do dry rot over time. So if you do find vintage shoes, you want to give them that little test where you kind of bend the soles to see if there's any give. Because what sometimes happens is if people don't do these things in check, you might sell them to somebody on eBay and then the buyer gets them, they wear them, and then all of a sudden they just fall apart instantaneously. So any type of testing that you can do ahead of time can help make sure that these are quality shoes. So if you're at Goodwill or if you're at a garage sale, before you buy them, just do a little bend and see if there's any type of cracking. And, you know, people still collect shoes. So even if there is some of that, I wouldn't even necessarily say you shouldn't take them if they're cheap enough. you just want to let that be known in the listing that these are for collectors only, because there are shoe collectors too. So there's so many different reasons why people are buying these shoes. People are buying them to wear them, have that nostalgia. People are buying them just to have them. So you definitely want to do that test and make sure that if they're going to be sold to be worn, that they're in that kind of condition. So I've said that. So next brand, this is what I think is most shocking to me. This next brand, if you find chunky platform shoes by the brand Route 66. Do you all know Route 66? Route 66 is sold at Walmart. Like Route 66 is low level shoes. Like these are bottom of the barrel shoes. And let me tell you, I could almost guarantee if Goodwill gets a pair of Route 66 vintage chunky platform shoes, boots, whatever, anything with that chunky sole, they're not going to price these up unless they watch this video, of course, so hopefully they don't. But Route 66, this is a bolo, believe it or not. Who would ever thought Route 66 would be a bolo? This is not what we've been led to believe, but that's what's happening because this style of shoe is that desirable. So Route 66. Now I did mention Skechers before, and now Skechers as a mid-level shoe, just to give you all an idea, I had mentioned that pair that I got that was, high 30s, low 40s. Now these Skechers, if you'll see, these boots for whatever reason are just very desirable. These black Skechers chunky boots, $200 these shoes are selling for very consistently. So this is sort of a Skechers bolo, if you will. Not all platform, chunky boot Skechers are going to go for that kind of money. But look at these vintage Skechers. These are great. So I had to throw them in there, had to put them in part of the video. Another low-end brand, Lower East Side. This, I'm pretty sure, though, don't quote me on it, I'm pretty sure Lower East Side was from Payless even. So there is no limit to the, low quality of brand that it needs to be. You can see these shoes right here sold for $75 from Lower East Side. These are bolos. You're going to pick these shoes up for probably next to nothing. So there is a challenge with selling shoes in general because shoes, you got to have the right size foot. So you may sit on these things. These may not be overnight sellers, but these will sell in time because this trend is happening. And you will look, if you just look it up yourself, you will see the sold comps. So there's other brands as well. And I just want to, when it comes to bolos, I thought I'd show this one pair that sells for super high. I've never heard of this brand. It's called Swear. But look at the price. $364.58 these shoes came for. Now, these are very, kind of unique looking shoes. We'll just put it that way. They're kind of raver shoes, which is kind of a different category in and of itself. But that is a huge return. So if you ever see shoes by this brand Swear that look like that, oh boy, you definitely want to pick those up. Now, before we go, I'm talking about women's shoes here for the most part, but I don't want to leave the men's shoes out either because there's something that's making a comeback as well for the men, and that is fat tongue skater shoes. Those are coming back also. So Vans, that's a big brand where vintage Vans that are fat tongue shoes, very desirable. They're selling between $70 and $80, as you can see, on average. So fat tongue shoes are definitely desirable. So you want to look for that. And then last but not least, I just want to show a bolo. Now, I've talked before in other videos about Jenko, and Jenko jeans are super valuable. Well, we also have Jenko shoes, and they are equally as valuable. So if you find Jenko skater shoes like these, look at these, sold for $529. Jenko is money, and shoes are no exception. So for those of you that sell shoes, this is a great trend to be paying attention for. To those of you who haven't started looking into shoes, this is a low investment kind of way to get started. You just have to kind of know what the shoes look like. So don't forget to like this video if you haven't already. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you haven't, that's very helpful. I'm still kind of a newish channel, and I do put out regular content that I'd like to think is pretty decent out regularly. So do subscribe and check out my videos every week. And again, my name is Melanie. This is Crow's Thrifty Finds. I'll see you next time.